I think I didn't do anything wrong, just made a silly joke at my husband's expense. But now, I'm staring at a stack of legal documents with his signature at the bottom, and everyone's looking at me like I'm the villain. All I wanted was some harmless fun, so why does it feel like my whole life is under investigation? Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The ambient lighting at Bistro Verde cast everything in a warm, golden glow that made me feel like I was on stage. Which, in a way, I was. Jules had picked this trendy spot for our double date, and I could tell she was trying to impress her new boyfriend Marcus with how sophisticated her older sister was. Little did she know I was about to give them all a show they'd never forget. "So, Graham," Marcus said, cutting into his overpriced steak, "Isolde tells me you're working on some kind of bridge project." My husband nodded, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. "Yeah, it's a pedestrian overpass downtown. Nothing too exciting." He glanced at me with that familiar look, the one that said he hoped I wouldn't turn this into another opportunity to showcase his supposed inadequacies. But I was feeling particularly witty that night. The wine had loosened my tongue, and Jules was hanging on my every word like she always did. "Oh, Graham's being modest," I said, my voice carrying just a little too loudly across our corner table. "He's very good with his hands. Well, when it comes to engineering, anyway." Jules snorted into her wine glass, and Marcus raised an eyebrow. Graham's face flushed slightly, but he managed a weak smile. "Isolde," he said quietly, "maybe we should—" "What? I'm just being honest." I laughed, reaching over to pat his hand in what I thought was an affectionate gesture. "You know, sometimes I wonder what it would be like to trade him in for a newer model, like when you lease a car, you know?" The table went quiet for a moment. Then Jules burst out laughing. "Oh my God, Izzy, you're terrible." "I'm just saying," I continued, emboldened by her reaction, "if I put Graham up for auction, what do you think the bidding would start at?" "Isolde, please," Graham said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I was on a roll now. The attention felt intoxicating. "No, seriously, let's make this fun. Who here would trade for my husband?" I raised my hand theatrically. "Show of hands." What happened next still plays in my mind like a slow-motion car crash. Jules immediately shot her hand up, giggling. Marcus looked uncomfortable, but raised his halfway, clearly trying to play along. But then I noticed the couple at the table next to us. They'd been eavesdropping, and the woman actually raised her hand too, smirking at her date. Even the waiter, a young guy named Sean, who'd been hovering nearby, caught my eye, and slowly raised his hand with a mischievous grin. The laughter that erupted around us was infectious, but when I looked back at Graham, his face had gone completely pale. His hand was clenched around his napkin, and for a moment, I thought he might actually get up and leave. "See," I said, trying to keep the mood light, "I told you he was a catch." But Graham wasn't laughing. He was staring at his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe, his jaw working silently. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation, with Jules and Marcus trying to fill the awkward silence while Graham barely spoke. When we got home that night, I was still buzzing from the attention. "That was fun, wasn't it?" I said, kicking off my heels in our bedroom. "Did you see how everyone was cracking up?" Graham sat heavily on the edge of the bed, not looking at me. "Fun," he repeated flatly. "Oh, come on, don't be such a stick in the mud. It was just a joke." "A joke?" He finally looked up at me, and something in his eyes made my stomach clench. "You asked a room full of strangers if they wanted to trade for me, Isolde, like I was a used appliance." I rolled my eyes. "You're being way too sensitive. Everyone was laughing. Everyone except me." "Well, maybe if you had a better sense of humor. Maybe if my wife didn't humiliate me in public for entertainment." The words hung between us like a challenge. I felt my defenses rising. "I wasn't humiliating you. I was being playful. There's a difference." But even as I said it, I could see Sean's face in my mind. That cute waiter with the easy smile, and the way he'd looked at me when he raised his hand. There had been something in that look, something that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. Graham must have seen something in my expression because his face darkened. "Isolde, what's going on with you lately? You've been different, distant." "I've been working hard," I said quickly. "You know how demanding my job is." "Your job as an office administrator?" The dismissive tone in his voice sparked something hot and angry in my chest. "Yes, my job. The one that helps pay for this apartment and your precious engineering conferences. Some of us can't all have exciting careers building bridges." Graham stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "I'm going to sleep in Emmy's room tonight. She's at my mother's anyway." As he gathered his pillow and left, I told myself he was overreacting. It had just been a harmless joke, but as I lay in our suddenly too large bed, I couldn't stop thinking about Sean's smile and the way the attention had made me feel like the most interesting woman in the room. Maybe Graham was right about one thing. I had been different lately, but different didn't have to mean wrong, did it? 3 weeks later, I was staying late at the office again, ostensibly to catch up on filing and answer emails. But really, I was waiting for Sean to finish his shift at the bistro down the street. We'd been texting since that night, innocent stuff at first, just funny memes and complaints about work. But lately, our conversations had taken on a flirtatious edge that made my heart race every time my phone buzzed. The office was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. I'd told Graham I was working on a big project for my boss, which wasn't entirely a lie. There was always something that needed doing, some excuse I could manufacture if he asked for details. My phone rang, Graham's name appearing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately felt guilty. He'd been calling more frequently lately, checking up on me with increasing concern. The voicemail notification popped up, and I reluctantly played it. "Hey, it's me. Just wondering when you'll be home. Emmy's asking for you, and dinner's getting cold. Call me back when you get this." The guilt twisted in my stomach, but before I could process it fully, my phone buzzed with a text from Sean. "Just got off work. Still at the office? I could bring coffee." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was crossing a line, and I knew it. But the thought of going home to Graham's worried questions, and Emmy's homework, and the same routine we'd been stuck in for years, made me feel suffocated. "Sure," I typed back. I could use the caffeine. 20 minutes later, Sean appeared at the office door with 2 steaming cups and that easy smile that made me forget I was a 33-year-old married mother. He was younger than me by a couple of years, with an art degree he wasn't using, and a carefree attitude that Graham would have called irresponsible, but I found refreshing. "Burning the midnight oil again?" he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Something like that." I accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. "Thanks for this. You didn't have to." "I wanted to." His eyes met mine over the rim of his cup. "Besides, I've been thinking about that night at the restaurant. Your joke." My cheeks warmed. "Oh, that. Graham wasn't too happy about it." "Graham seems like he takes himself pretty seriously." "He does." The words came out more bitter than I'd intended. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to an instruction manual. Everything has to be proper and planned and boring. Sean leaned forward, his expression sympathetic. "That must be hard. You're such a vibrant person. It's obvious you need more excitement in your life." The compliment sent a thrill through me. When was the last time Graham had called me vibrant? When was the last time he'd really looked at me, not just glanced up from his engineering journals or his laptop? "I used to be more exciting," I said, surprised by my own honesty. "Before marriage, before Emmy, I was spontaneous. I traveled. I took risks. Now I feel like I'm just existing." "You're still that person," Sean said softly. "You just need someone who appreciates that side of you." My phone rang again. Graham, persistent as always. This time I declined the call outright, then immediately turned the phone face down on my desk. "Problems at home?" Sean asked. "Just my husband being controlling. He thinks I should be home every night by 6, like some kind of housewife from the 50s. It wasn't entirely true. Graham had never demanded I be home by a certain time. He just worried when I was out late without explanation. But sitting here with Sean, feeling appreciated and interesting for the first time in months, it was easy to reframe Graham's concern as control. "You deserve better than that," Sean said, reaching across the desk to touch my hand. The contact sent electricity up my arm. I should have pulled away, should have made an excuse and gone home to my family. Instead, I let his fingers intertwine with mine. "Sean," I started, not sure what I was going to say. "I know you're married," he said quietly, "but that doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel alive." When I finally got home that night, it was past 11. Graham was waiting in the living room, still dressed, his face creased with worry. "Where were you?" he asked, standing as I came through the door. "I called 4 times. I told you, I was working." I avoided his eyes, busying myself with hanging up my coat. "Sorry, my phone was on silent." "Isolde, I drove by your office. The building was dark." My heart hammered, but I forced myself to sound annoyed rather than panicked. "I was in the back conference room. The windows don't face the street, Graham. God, did you really drive by to check up on me? That's a little pathetic, don't you think?" He flinched at the word pathetic, and I felt a stab of satisfaction. If he was going to spy on me, he deserved to feel bad about it. "I wasn't checking up on you. I was worried. You've been working late almost every night this week, and when you call, you're interrupting my work. Do you want me to get fired? Is that what this is about? You want me to be completely dependent on you?" "That's not—" Graham ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "Isolde, what's happening to us? We used to talk. We used to be a team." For a moment, looking at his tired face and the genuine pain in his eyes, I almost told him everything. Almost confessed about Sean and the way he made me feel and how trapped I'd been feeling in our marriage. But then I thought about the lecture that would follow, the disappointment, the way he'd probably want to go to counseling and work on our communication, like we were a broken appliance he could fix with the right tools. "Nothing's happening to us," I said instead. "You're just being paranoid. I'm working hard for our future, and instead of being supportive, you're acting like a jealous boyfriend." Graham's face went very still. "Jealous?" "Yes, jealous. Like you don't trust me. Like you think I'm some kind of cheater just because I have a life outside this apartment." The word cheater hung in the air between us, and I realized with a sick feeling that I'd gone too far. But I couldn't take it back now without admitting guilt. "I never said you were cheating," Graham said quietly. "But you're thinking it, aren't you? That's what all this checking up is about." He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "I'm going to bed. Emmy's school play is tomorrow night. I hope you can make time for that." As he walked away, my phone buzzed with another text from Sean. "Had a great time tonight. Can't wait to see you again." I deleted the message, but not before a warm feeling spread through my chest. At least someone appreciated my company. The next morning, I found Graham's mother, Vivian, in our kitchen, making breakfast for Emmy. She looked up when I entered, her lips pressed into their familiar disapproving line. "Good morning, Isolde," she said coolly. "Graham asked me to get Emmy ready for school since you were sleeping in." I glanced at the clock, 8:30 a.m. I had overslept, but only by half an hour. I had a late night at work. "So, Graham mentioned—" Vivian's tone suggested she had opinions about my work schedule, none of them positive. "He also mentioned you've been working quite a lot of late nights recently." "It's called having a career, Vivian." Emmy looked up from her cereal, sensing the tension. "Mommy, are you coming to my play tonight?" "Of course, sweetheart." I kissed the top of her head, shooting a defiant look at my mother-in-law. I wouldn't miss it. But even as I said it, I was thinking about Sean's text and wondering if he'd want to meet up afterward. The school auditorium was packed with parents, armed with cameras and flowers, all waiting for the third-grade production of The Three Little Pigs. I'd managed to arrive just as the lights dimmed, slipping into the seat Graham had saved for me in the third row. He didn't say anything when I sat down, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. Emmy was playing the first little pig, and despite everything going on between Graham and me, I felt a surge of maternal pride as she took the stage in her pink costume. She was so serious about her lines, her little face scrunched in concentration as she declared her intention to build a house of straw. "She's been practicing for weeks," Graham whispered, leaning close enough that I could smell his familiar cologne. For a moment, I let myself remember why I'd fallen in love with him. The way he supported Emmy's dreams, how gentle he was with her, the quiet strength that had once made me feel safe. But then my phone buzzed with a text, and the spell was broken. "Sean, hope your daughter's play goes well. Thinking of you." I quickly silenced the phone, but not before Graham noticed the glow of the screen. He gave me a questioning look, and I mouthed, "Work emergency," before turning my attention back to the stage. After the play, we mingled in the lobby with other parents while Emmy changed out of her costume. Jules had come to support her niece, and she immediately launched into praise for Emmy's performance. "She was amazing," Jules gushed, pulling me aside. "But you look stressed. Everything okay?" Before I could answer, Graham's mother appeared with Emmy in tow. "Wonderful job, sweetheart," Vivian said, hugging her granddaughter. "Your father and I are so proud." I noticed she didn't mention me in that statement. "We should celebrate," Jules suggested. "Ice cream? My treat." As we debated locations, I spotted several other couples from the school community, people we saw at PTA meetings and school events. The Hendersons were there, along with the Patels and the Johnsons. Normal families with their normal problems, all celebrating their children's achievements. That's when inspiration struck. "You know," I said loudly enough for the nearby parents to hear, "this reminds me of that joke I made at dinner a few weeks ago, about trading husbands." Graham's face immediately went pale. "Isolde, don't—" "What joke?" asked Sarah Henderson, always eager for gossip. "Oh, it was hilarious," I continued, warming to my audience. "I asked who would trade for Graham, and you should have seen how many hands went up." Jules laughed nervously. "Izzy, maybe we should—" "No, it's funny," I insisted. "Graham was so embarrassed, but I think it's sweet that other people find him attractive. Even our waiter wanted to trade for him." The other parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sarah Henderson's smile looked forced, and Mr. Patel was suddenly very interested in his phone. "Mom," Emmy said quietly, tugging on my sleeve, "can we get ice cream now?" But I was on a roll, fueled by the same reckless energy that had gotten me into this mess. I mean, marriage shouldn't be so serious all the time, right? We should be able to joke about these things. Graham just takes everything so personally. "Because it is personal," Graham said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Can we please not do this here?" "Do what? Make conversation? God, Graham, you act like I committed some terrible crime. It was a joke." The lobby had grown quieter, and I realized people were listening. But instead of feeling embarrassed, I felt vindicated. Let them hear how uptight my husband was, how he couldn't take a simple joke. "Maybe we should head home," Vivian said firmly, taking Emmy's hand. "It's getting late." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone as it buzzed again, "I might have to work tonight. Big project deadline." Graham's eyes narrowed as he watched me read the message. "On a Thursday night, after Emmy's play?" "Work doesn't stop for school plays, Graham. Some of us have demanding jobs." The message was from Sean. "Free tonight. Would love to hear about the play." I typed back quickly. "Might be able to get away later." When I looked up, Graham was staring at my phone with an expression I'd never seen before. Not hurt or confused, but something colder, more calculating. "Who are you texting?" he asked quietly. "My boss," I lied smoothly, She needs me to review some contracts tonight. Your boss, at 9 p.m. on a Thursday. Yes, Graham, my boss, the one who signs my paychecks. Is that okay with you, or do I need permission now? The other parents were definitely staring now, and I could see the judgment in their eyes, but I was too far in to back down. You know what? I said, my voice carrying across the lobby. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I can't even have a work conversation without being interrogated. Maybe I should have taken one of those offers to trade. The silence that followed was deafening. Emmy's face crumpled, and she pressed closer to her grandmother. Jules looked mortified. Graham just stood there, his face completely expressionless. "Mommy," Emmy whispered, "why are you being mean to Daddy?" The question hit me like a slap. I looked around at all the faces staring at us, some shocked, some disapproving, some just uncomfortable. For a moment, I saw the scene through their eyes, a woman publicly humiliating her husband and upsetting her child for no apparent reason. But then my phone buzzed again, and I felt that familiar thrill of being wanted, of being interesting to someone. "I'm not being mean, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "Daddy and I just have different opinions about jokes." Graham picked up Emmy, who wrapped her arms around his neck. "We're going home," he said quietly. "Isolde, you can do whatever you want." As they walked away, my husband carrying our daughter, followed by his disapproving mother, I felt a moment of panic. This wasn't how the evening was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the fun, spontaneous one, the victim of an uptight husband who couldn't take a joke. "Izzy," Jules said quietly, "what the hell was that?" "What do you mean?" "You just humiliated Graham in front of half the school community over a joke that wasn't even funny the first time." I felt my defenses rising. "I was just making conversation. If Graham can't handle a little teasing..." "That wasn't teasing. That was cruel." Jules shook her head. "And what's this about working tonight? Since when do you work Thursday evenings?" "Since I got promoted to handling more important accounts," I lied. "You wouldn't understand. You've never had a serious job." Jules stared at me like she'd never seen me before. "Who are you right now? This isn't the sister I know." But I was already walking away, pulling out my phone to text Sean back. "Can meet in an hour. Need to get out of here." As I drove home to change clothes, I told myself that everyone was overreacting. So what if I'd made a joke at Graham's expense? Married couples teased each other all the time. If he was too sensitive to handle it, that was his problem, not mine. But Emmy's question echoed in my mind. "Why are you being mean to Daddy?" I pushed the thought away and focused on the evening ahead. Sean would understand. Sean would make me feel like myself again. I met Sean at a wine bar across town, somewhere I was unlikely to run into anyone from Graham's work or Emmy's school. The place was dimly lit with exposed brick walls and jazz music playing softly in the background. The kind of atmosphere that made everything feel more romantic and less like what it actually was. "You look upset," Sean said after we'd ordered drinks. "Rough night." I launched into the story of Emmy's play and the confrontation in the lobby, painting myself as the victim of Graham's jealousy and controlling behavior. Sean listened with appropriately sympathetic expressions, occasionally reaching over to touch my hand or my arm. "He sounds exhausting," Sean said when I finished. "All that suspicion and paranoia. You deserve someone who trusts you." "That's what I keep trying to tell him," I said, taking a large sip of wine. "I mean, I'm allowed to have friends, aren't I? I'm allowed to text people without being interrogated." "Of course you are. You're not his property." The validation felt intoxicating. Here was someone who understood me, who saw Graham's behavior for what it really was, controlling and unreasonable. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd made different choices," I said, the wine making me more honest than I'd intended. "If I'd waited, traveled more, not gotten married so young." "It's not too late," Sean said quietly. "You're still young, still beautiful, still interesting." When he leaned across the table to kiss me, I didn't pull away. The kiss was everything my marriage wasn't. Spontaneous, passionate, exciting. For those few seconds, I felt like the person I used to be, not the tired wife and mother I'd become. When we broke apart, Sean smiled. I've wanted to do that since that night at the restaurant. Sean, I know you're married, but you're not happy. Anyone can see that. He was right, wasn't he? I wasn't happy. I was trapped in a routine that was slowly suffocating me, married to a man who didn't appreciate my sense of humor or my need for excitement. What was wrong with finding happiness wherever I could? This is complicated, I said weakly. Only if you make it complicated. We talked for another hour, our conversation growing more intimate as the wine flowed. Sean told me about his dreams of being an artist, his frustration with his dead-end job, his admiration for my independence and wit. I found myself sharing things I'd never told Graham. My regrets about settling down so early, my fears that I was becoming boring, my longing for adventure. When he suggested we get a hotel room, I almost said yes. The word was on the tip of my tongue, and I could picture it. A night of feeling desired and interesting and alive. But at the last moment, Emmy's face flashed in my mind. I can't, I said. Not tonight. I need to think. Sean looked disappointed but not surprised. I understand, but Isolde, you can't live your whole life for other people. At some point, you have to choose your own happiness. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling from the kiss, my mind spinning with possibilities. The apartment was dark when I arrived, and I assumed everyone was asleep. But as I crept toward the bedroom, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Can't keep pretending everything's normal, Graham was saying. I've been telling you for months that something was wrong, Vivian replied. The way she talks to you, the way she dismisses your feelings. It's not normal, Graham. I froze in the hallway, straining to hear. But Emmy loves her, and I took vows. For better or worse, right? Vows work both ways, Vivian said firmly. What about her vows to you, to honor and respect you? When was the last time she did either of those things? Mum, please, I just need to figure out how to fix this. You can't fix someone who doesn't think they're broken. I felt a surge of anger. How dare they sit in my kitchen and discuss me like I was some kind of problem to be solved? I was about to march in there and confront them when Graham spoke again. I found something today, he said quietly. In her car. A receipt from that wine bar downtown. From 2 weeks ago, when she said she was working late. My blood ran cold. Graham, Vivian said gently. And her phone bill. There are hundreds of texts to a number I don't recognize, all at times when she claimed to be at work. What are you going to do? There was a long pause. I don't know. I keep hoping I'm wrong, that there's some explanation. And if there isn't, another pause, longer this time, then I need to protect Emmy, and myself. I crept back to the bedroom, my mind racing. Graham was getting suspicious, asking questions, looking through receipts and phone bills. I needed to be more careful, cover my tracks better. But I also felt indignant. What right did he have to spy on me? To go through my things like some kind of detective? The next morning, I confronted him while Emmy was getting ready for school. I heard you and your mother talking last night, I said, cornering him in the kitchen. About me. Graham's face went very still. You were listening? I live here too, Graham. I have a right to know when I'm being discussed in my own home. Our home, he corrected quietly. And we weren't discussing you. We were discussing our marriage. Same thing. And I don't appreciate being psychoanalyzed by your mother. She's never liked me. This isn't about my mother. This is about us, about the fact that you're lying to me. The accusation hung in the air between us. I could have confessed then, could have told him about Sean and the wine bar and the kiss that had made me feel alive for the first time in years. Instead, I went on the attack. Lying? About what? The wine bar receipt, the late nights, the phone calls you won't answer. So you are spying on me, going through my things, checking up on me like I'm some kind of criminal. I'm trying to save our marriage. By violating my privacy, by treating me like a suspect. Graham ran his hands through his hair, looking exhausted. Isolde, just tell me the truth. Are you having an affair? The question was so direct, so simple, that for a moment I was speechless. Then the lies came flooding out. How can you even ask me that? After 9 years of marriage, after everything we've built together, you think I'm cheating on you? I don't want to think it, but your behavior... My behavior? What about your behavior? The constant suspicion, the checking up, the interrogations. Maybe if you trusted your wife, we wouldn't have these problems. Trust has to be earned, Isolde. And lately... Lately what? I've been working hard to advance my career, and instead of being supportive, you're acting like a paranoid control freak. Graham stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something dying in his eyes. You're really not going to tell me the truth, are you? I am telling you the truth. The truth is that you're so insecure you can't handle your wife having a life outside this apartment. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. Okay, I'm going to take Emmy to school. When I get back, maybe you should stay at Jules's for a few days. Give us both some space to think. You're kicking me out. I'm suggesting we take a break, before we say things we can't take back. As he walked away to get Emmy, I felt a moment of panic. This was escalating beyond my control. But then my phone buzzed with a text from Sean. Thinking about last night. When can I see you again? The message reminded me that I had options. I didn't have to stay in a marriage where I was constantly questioned and suspected. I deserved better than Graham's paranoia and his mother's disapproval. I texted back, "Soon. Things are complicated at home." "I'm here for you," came the immediate reply. "Whatever you need." At least someone appreciated me. I spent 3 days at Jules's apartment, spinning the story, to make myself the victim of Graham's unreasonable jealousy. But Jules wasn't as sympathetic as I'd expected. "Izzy, I love you, but something doesn't add up," she said on the second morning, sitting across from me at her kitchen table with her coffee. "Graham's never been the jealous type. He's always trusted you completely." "Well, people change," I said defensively. "Maybe marriage made him possessive. Or maybe you're not telling me everything." I felt a flash of annoyance. "Whose side are you on here?" "I'm on the side of truth. And the truth is, you've been acting weird for months. The constant late nights, the secrecy about work, the way you've been talking about Graham like he's some kind of burden." "He is a burden sometimes. Marriage is hard, Jules. You wouldn't understand." "Because I'm not married. Because I don't have kids. That doesn't mean I'm stupid, Izzy." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Graham's name on the screen made my stomach clench. "We need to talk," he said without preamble when I answered. "Can you meet me at Brennan and Associates on 5th Street? 2 o'clock. "What's Brennan and Associates?" "Just be there, Isolde, please." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in confusion. Jules was watching me with a worried expression. What was that about? "I don't know. He wants to meet somewhere. Some office building." "Izzy," Jules said carefully, "Brennan and Associates is a family law firm. I looked them up when my friend Sarah got divorced." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Family law? As in divorce lawyers?" I felt the blood drain from my face. He wouldn't. Graham would never... Maybe you should call him back. Explain whatever's really going on before this gets out of hand. But I was already grabbing my purse, my mind racing. Graham was bluffing. He had to be. He was just trying to scare me into confessing to something I hadn't even done. Not really. A kiss wasn't an affair. Texting wasn't cheating. He was overreacting to everything, and now he was trying to manipulate me with threats of divorce. Well, two could play that game. The law office was in a sleek downtown building with marble floors and expensive-looking furniture. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where Graham was already sitting with a woman in a navy suit who looked like she could dismantle someone's life with a smile. "Isolde," the woman said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm Rebecca Brennan. Please have a seat." I remained standing, looking between Graham and the lawyer. "What is this?" "This is me trying to save our marriage," Graham said quietly. "One last time. By bringing lawyers into it. By getting everything out in the open." He gestured to a manila folder on the table. "I hired a private investigator, Isolde." The words hit me like a slap. "You what?" "I hired someone to find out what you've really been doing during all those late nights at work." My legs suddenly felt weak, and I sank into the chair across from them. "Graham, you can't be serious." Rebecca Brennan opened the folder and spread its contents across the table. Photos of me and Sean at the wine bar. Copies of text messages I thought were private. Credit card receipts from restaurants I'd never mentioned. A detailed timeline of my movements over the past month. "The investigator was very thorough," Rebecca said in a professional tone that somehow made everything worse. "Would you like to review the evidence?" I stared at the photos, my mind spinning. There was Sean leaning across the table toward me. There was the moment of the kiss, captured in black and white like evidence in a criminal trial. There were timestamps and locations, and a level of detail that made me feel completely exposed. "This is illegal," I said weakly. "You can't spy on your wife." "Actually," Rebecca said, "surveillance of a spouse is perfectly legal when there's reasonable suspicion of adultery, especially when it involves documenting behavior that could affect custody arrangements." "Custody?" The word came out as a whisper. Graham leaned forward, his face serious but not unkind. "Isolde, I need you to understand something. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about hurting you. This is about protecting Emmy and protecting myself." "From what? I haven't done anything wrong." "You've been having an emotional affair for weeks. You've been lying to me, to our daughter, to everyone around us. You humiliated me in public multiple times, and when I tried to talk to you about it, you made me feel like I was crazy. It's not an affair. We're just friends." Rebecca slid one of the photos toward me, the kiss, captured in perfect clarity. "This is friendship." I stared at the image, trying to find words that would make this all go away. It was just one kiss. It didn't mean anything. "The text messages suggest otherwise," Graham said quietly, "talking about how unhappy you are in our marriage. How you wish you'd made different choices. How you deserve better than what I can give you." Seeing my private thoughts laid out like evidence in a court case made me feel sick. But underneath the shame was a growing anger. How dare they ambush me like this? How dare Graham violate my privacy and then act like he was the victim? "So what is this?" I asked, my voice getting louder. "Some kind of intervention? You're going to shame me into being the perfect little wife?" "This is me offering you a choice," Graham said. "We can try counseling. We can work on our marriage. But it has to start with honesty, Isolde. Complete honesty. No more lies, no more secrets, no more contact with Sean." "And if I refuse?" Rebecca answered for him. "Then we proceed with divorce proceedings. And given the evidence of adultery and the pattern of deception, custody arrangements would likely favor your husband." The threat was clear, and it made my blood boil. "You're trying to blackmail me." "I'm trying to save our family," Graham said. "But I can't do it alone, and I won't stay married to someone who's actively trying to destroy what we've built." I looked at the photos again, at the evidence of my secret life spread across the conference table. For a moment, I considered confessing everything, apologizing, begging for forgiveness, and promising to do better. But then I thought about Sean's words. "You can't live your whole life for other people." "This is ridiculous," I said, standing up. "You're making a huge deal out of nothing." "So I have a friend. So I had one drink with him. That doesn't make me an adulteress, and it certainly doesn't make me an unfit mother." Graham's face fell. "So you're not going to end it with Sean?" "There's nothing to end. We're friends, Graham. Just because you don't have any friends doesn't mean I'm not allowed to have them." The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca was taking notes, probably documenting my refusal to cooperate. Graham was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. I see, he said finally. Then I guess we're done here. Graham, wait. But he was already standing, shaking hands with Rebecca, discussing next steps and filing deadlines. I sat there surrounded by the evidence of my betrayal, watching my marriage end in a sterile conference room. As Graham walked toward the door, he paused and looked back at me. For what it's worth, Isolde, I really hoped you'd choose us. Choose Emmy. Choose the family we built together. I did choose our family, I said desperately. I'm choosing it right now. No, he said sadly. You're choosing yourself. You always have. After he left, I sat alone with Rebecca, who was efficiently organizing the photos back into their folder. Mrs. Merrin, she said, you should know that your husband really doesn't want this divorce. Even now, if you were willing to end the affair and commit to counseling, I think he'd reconsider. There is no affair, I said automatically. Rebecca gave me a look that suggested she'd heard that denial many times before. The offer stands until we file the papers. After that, things become more adversarial. I walked out of that office in a daze, my mind spinning with the implications of what had just happened. Graham was serious about this. He was actually willing to divorce me over a friendship, over a few text messages and one meaningless kiss. But as I drove back to Jules's apartment, I felt something else beneath the panic. Relief. Maybe this was what I'd wanted all along. Maybe this was my chance to finally live for myself, to choose excitement over security, passion over routine. When I texted Sean about what had happened, his response was immediate. I'm so sorry you're going through this, but maybe it's a sign. Maybe this is the universe telling you it's time for a new chapter. Maybe he was right. Maybe losing Graham wasn't a tragedy. Maybe it was an opportunity. 6 months later, I stood in family court wearing my best suit and what I hoped was an appropriately remorseful expression. The divorce proceedings had been brutal, with every text message, every lie, every public humiliation laid bare for the judge to examine. My lawyer had advised me to show contrition, to admit my mistakes, and throw myself on the mercy of the court. But every time I tried to summon genuine remorse, I found myself thinking about how Graham had violated my privacy, how he'd ambushed me with lawyers and private investigators, instead of trying to work things out like adults. Your Honor, my attorney was saying, my client acknowledges that she made some poor choices during a difficult period in her marriage, but she's committed to being a good mother to Emmy, and she believes joint custody is in the child's best interest. Judge Martinez, a stern woman in her 50s, reviewed the file with an expression that gave nothing away. Mrs. Merrin, I've read through all the evidence in this case, the text messages, the photographs, the testimony from witnesses who observed your behavior at various public events. Do you have anything you'd like to say before I make my ruling? I stood up, my legs shaking slightly. Your Honor, I want to say that I never meant for things to go this far. I made some mistakes, but I love my daughter more than anything, and I would never do anything to hurt her. In court, Judge Martinez cited my lies, affair with Sean, and lack of remorse. Primary custody to Graham. I got supervised visits with Emmy every other weekend and one evening weekly, pending counseling. I accused Graham of punishment. He said, "You chose this. Lies, betrayal, humiliation. I tried to save us." Emmy 9 begged us to stay a family. I had no answer. Freedom felt like loneliness. Sean bailed, too heavy. He never asked me to leave. I left for myself. Supervised visits in a sterile room. Friends ghosted. Co-workers froze me out. 6 months later, supervision lifted, standard weekends granted, a consolation prize. Graham's last words, "I never wanted this. I tried." I finally saw what I'd destroyed, a gentle man who loved the real me. I traded devotion for thrill and lost everything that mattered.